I want to continue a series that I've started called Why Microgroups? Why are microgroups such an optimum setting for making, reproducing disciples? In my first session on Why Microgroups, we focused on the difference between relationship and program and how the microgroups facilitate a relational dimension that was modeled and mirrored in Jesus' own approach to focusing in on a few. In this session, I want to show why microgroups are so effective for multiplication. Now, I need to go back in terms of some of my own story and history. When I first thought of discipling, I thought of one-to-one relationships. I think my earliest model was a one-to-one relationship with a pastor that I had a relationship with, and Ministry of the Navigators, which I highly respect and appreciate so much, at least back in those days, was focused in on one-to-one relationships. So that was just my paradigm. That's what I thought the discipling was. Perhaps we take this from Paul's relationship with Timothy. We say Paul's should have a Timothy, so that serves as a paradigm of a teacher over a student, the one who's mature over the one who's immature, the father over the son, that kind of relationship. And so that's what I went about doing. And so in my early pastorates, I would have men in my life on a weekly basis that I spent time with. And so we would kind of hopscotch around to various kinds of topics that we would spend our time with. Perhaps it was just laying the foundations of our faith and going over some basic Christianity, like John Stott's book of that same title. Or how do we apply our faith to the family, or apply our faith to the workplace? Oh, maybe we should talk about spiritual discipline. So what's it like to have a quiet time? What do you need to do within a quiet time? So it sounded like I was kind of ping-ponging around, pinballing around in a sense to various topics. And as I looked at the dynamic of that, I saw what perhaps inhibited the growth into multiplication. The first thing is that the discipler in a one-to-one relationship carries the weight of responsibility for the one being discipled. I always felt like the pressure was right here on my chest. I've got to make it happen. I've got to be the one to move things forward in the relationship. The analogy that it has been in my mind is it's kind of like a mother bird trying to get the baby birds out of the nest. And what does the mother bird do? It goes out and finds all the morsels of food for the baby birds, and the baby birds, when they come back, are got their mouth open, alive, waiting for the mother to drop the food into the mouth. So the pressure is always on the discipler. Secondly, it sets up a hierarchical relationship. As I've already described with the Paul-Timothy relationship, it's one over another. It's the teacher over the student. And the more you emphasize the hierarchy of the relationship, more difficult it is for the one who's being discipled to feel like they can then be in the lead position to disciple others. So it sets up that kind of setting. The third element here is it's kind of a one-to-one ping-pong match. The dynamics in the relationship are quite limited. And that's the way I've described it before. It's a dialogue back and forth. And again, the pressure is on the one who's the discipler to keep that dialogue moving on. But it's not a very dynamic kind of setting. It also, and the fourth element here, sets up a single model of a disciple over a discipler. My life then becomes the only model that someone sees, at least in this intimate kind of connection, that they should model their life after. And maybe that's just because I know my own limitations and my areas of weakness, that I don't want to be just the sole person in someone's life. And then finally, and most disappointingly, I did not find much multiplication take place in these relationships. After spending considerable amount of time with man after man, I didn't see maybe a single person adopt a lifestyle of discipling others. But as you know, I stumbled on a change in paradigm accidentally by being challenged to get a group of 3 people because I was completing my doctor of ministry degree, and I'd finished a very early version of what later became Discipleship Essentials, and I was challenged to use that in a number of different contexts. And when I stumbled on this group of 3, which I called a triad, and now we have moved to a quad, and we put 3s and 4s together, we call them micro groups, I saw the dynamics changed considerably in the relationship that made for multiplication. So what was the change in those dynamics? Well, first of all, I saw the pressure removed from me as the center of attention, and so I could just participate as a part of the group. In a group of 4, even though I might be a pastor in that setting, I readily become just a part of the group on the journey with them. I share my story. I share my insights into Scripture. I hear what everybody else's insights are. I am not the focal point of attention. I'm not the Bible answer man that they have to turn to get all their answers taken care of. Secondly, it shifts us out of a hierarchical relationship into a peer relationship where we're bouncing back and forth with each other. My opinion is no more important than somebody else's opinion. My insight no greater than somebody else's insight necessarily. If I have something to offer, it's readily accepted along with everybody else's insights as well. So, and the third element, and I think this is the first thing that I noticed with the group of 3 versus one-on-one, was the increase in dynamics of the interchange in the relationship. The energy level went up. As we each participated in sharing our answers, there was very little lull time in the context. And I remember so often walking into these relationships, maybe being a little bit tired, walking out of them with, wow, that was a lot of fun. What was going on there? And then fourthly, you add a person or 2, you have more models from which to live out of. One of the stories I like to recount was fairly early on in experiencing triads. This happened to be a triad, a group of 3, was with Glenn and Ken. Ken was a retired dentist in his mid-60s at the time, and we started our work, and I remember him being very timid in terms of sharing his answers to his questions. He would come in with his book filled with answers, every inch of the page taken up, but kind of had his head down, like, I don't want to make eye contact because I'm going to have to share something. Well, there's only 3 of us. Of course you're going to have to share something. But not too long into the relationship, Ken found out that he had cancer. And the regimen was that every 3rd week he would go to Mission Oaks Hospital and be in there for a week to get chemotherapy. So every 3rd week, we shifted the location of our discipleship group to Ken's hospital. We'd meet him in his hospital room, and then we'd take him over to the hospital chapel as he dragged his drip bag with him. And I noticed a phenomenal shift in Ken's discipleship, his joy, his engagement, his growing confidence in his relationship with the Lord. As he had to face potential death, doctors initially said, oh, you only have maybe a year to live. That somehow gave him even greater sense of joy in his relationship. In fact, Ken, I was told by the people at the hospital, has become our unofficial hospital chaplain when he is here, because he gets out of his bed, walks from room to room with his drip bag, and he gives great joy to people all around him. You know, when Ken made that shift, I was his student. And I lapped up the joy that I saw in his life and thought, gosh, you know, Lord, you are present in him. You can be present in me in that way. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, I saw this as an empowerment model for others to multiply as well. What happened when there was a much more egalitarian, peer relationship was people said, I can do this. Because we always rotated leadership. It wasn't just me leading. We all shared in the leadership responsibility. And after a while, people said, oh, you know, the average normal believer can multiply these groups. And I saw then starting about a 70% reproduction rate. Not everybody reproduces. Not everybody adopts a lifestyle of discipling others. Other people find that they have other gifts in areas of ministry where they give themselves. But for at least one generation, and many times far more than that, found them in going to and inviting people in relationship and taking them to the conclusion. At the end of this video, I'm going to show you a fun clip from a movie that is called Paying It Forward. And I just want you to pay attention to the image at the end of that movie because it shows the kind of multiplication that we are talking about.
This is your assignment. Extra credit, it goes on all year long. Now, wait a minute. What's wrong with this? What's the matter? Yes?
It's like so...
So what? There must be a word to finish that sentence. Someone help her?
Weird. Crazy.
Weird. Crazy.
Hard. Bummer.
Bummer. Hard. How about possible? It's possible. The realm of possibility exists where? In each of you. Here. So you can do it. You can surprise us. It's up to you. Or you can just sit back and let it atrophy. Atrophy. If there is a word you hear that you don't understand, there's a dictionary at the front of the room. Look it up. And there are these dictionaries, which you will carry with you at all times, because in this class, we're going to learn to love words and their meanings. Any questions?
Yeah. So you'll, like, flunk us if we don't change the world.
Well, no, I wouldn't do that. But you might just squeak by with a C.
What'd you ever do to change the world?
Well, Trevor, I get a good night's sleep. I eat a hearty breakfast. I show up on time. And then I pass the buck to you. Now, I want you all to write your names in these books. And what's your name? Molly. All right, I want Molly to look up the word at.
What's paying it forward?
That's me. That's me. And that's 3 people. And I'm going to help them. But it has to be something really big. Something they can't do by themselves. So I do it for them. Then they do it for 3 other people. That's 9. And I do 3 more.
All right. A little articulation, please. Yes.
I think it's a good idea.
Sean?
It's stupid.
Adam?
It's the honor system. People blow off the honor system.
So what? Just because you do.
Well, Trevor, the class seems to think that you've come up with an overly utopian idea. Look that word up in a minute.
Like a perfect world?
Mm-hmm.
So?
So?